Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, my name is Vivian. I'm an incoming medical student starting this fall semester. So I've been documenting my life on Instagram for a couple of years now, and I want to start sharing my experiences I had as a pre-medical student here on the wonderful world of YouTube. In last week's video, I talked about my MCAT experience, where I shared with you my timeline, the resources I used, and my study schedule. You can check out that video up here. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram if you want to see more content like this. Let's get started on the video. Okay, so in this video, I'll first give a brief overview of what the MCAT is, and then I'll go over how I studied for all 4 sections of the exam during my content review phase, and then how I prepped with practice questions and practice tests. All timestamps will be provided down below. Okay, so if you guys have no idea what the MCAT is and you guys just clicked on this video just for the fun of it, have no worries, because I'm going to give you a short summary of what the MCAT really is and why so many pre-meds like myself have lost so many nights of sleep worrying about whether or not they're going to do well on this test. The MCAT, or the Medical College Admission Test, is a standardized multiple choice exam for prospective medical students developed and administered by the AAMC. Almost every medical school requires medical students to take this exam in order for their application to be accepted. Although this is with the exception of some schools that offer special programs that allow you to skip the exam. There are four sections on this test: the chemistry and physics section, the critical analysis and reasoning or CAR section, the biochemistry and biology section, and the psychology and sociology section. Also, side note, there are no calculators allowed on this exam, but no worries because the math is fairly simple and we have scratch paper and it's multiple choice, so it's okay. If you're a pre-med and it's still very early for you before you apply to medical school, I highly suggest you finish these prerequisite courses before you take the MCAT. Although technically you don't have to finish all of these courses, and that there are some people who are able to self-teach themselves the material while they're studying for the exam, I highly recommend you at least take biochemistry, general and organic chemistry, and at least the first course of physics. I say this because these subjects are generally more difficult for most people, and at least having this background knowledge from your college courses will help you in the long run when you're preparing for the MCAT. So all sections except the CAR section is 95 minutes long with 59 questions, and the CAR section is 90 minutes long with 53 questions. The entire exam itself is a heaping 7.5 hours long, including 2 10-minute breaks and 1 30-minute lunch break.
You get a lunch break in the middle of this exam.
So during my content review phase, I mainly use the Kaplan MCAT book sets. The set comes with 7 books: biochemistry, biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, CARS, and the behavioral sciences section, which is the psychology and sociology. I focused on mastering my content for about 1.5 months, where each day I would focus on only one subject. So for example, on Monday, I would only work on my biochemistry chapters, but the following day I would work on something totally different like physics or chemistry or behavioral sciences. Every day, however, I would work on a couple of CAR passages. So one disclaimer, I actually didn't do that well on CARs, so I'm just gonna spare you from listening to my advice I have for this section, since you guys are probably gonna do much better without my help. So for each subject except for CARs, I had a designated notebook where I took my notes on from each chapter that I read. So for general chemistry and physics, which were way more formula and calculation heavy, I did word problems in addition to my reading and taking notes. So I found these extra problems from Khan Academy or from my Google searches, where I would just search up old homework sets from random universities, or I'd even find some word problems from my old textbooks in college. The key is to continue continually doing practice problems. Chemistry and physics is much more than memorizing formulas and concepts. It's very important that you understand these formulas and how they're derived. Doing practice problems will allow you to apply your knowledge and ultimately better help you understand the material. On the other hand, organic chemistry isn't much formula or calculation heavy. Instead, it's much more of understanding reaction mechanisms, reagents, and following the movement and manipulation of electrons. Luckily for me, organic chemistry was one of my favorite topics in college. So I didn't really have to prepare much for it when I was studying for the MCAT, but it definitely wasn't an easy topic. So how I was able to get through organic chemistry during undergrad was not only to understand the concepts, such as why certain reagents were used to produce a specific type of product, but I also repeatedly drew out and worked on various reaction mechanisms and synthesis problems, which allowed me to learn how electrons were pushed around between reactions. Okay, so if you master organic chemistry and you're good at biology, then biochemistry should be a piece of cake for you. It's basically organic chemistry in your body. So biology was mainly memorization for me. I use flashcards, but I'm also a visual learner, so I liked to draw out a lot of the pathways and a lot of the anatomy and physiological reactions that were happening in the body. So just a side note, I just want to remind you guys that I'm making this video to share my experiences and give some tips that I've learned from my MCAT experience. But by all means, do not feel pressured to change your study style to mine. Do what works best for you. If you're a visual learner, do what you've been doing to study. Just take my tips with a grain of salt, maybe implement it in yours, but definitely do what's best for you. So anyways, lastly, the behavioral sciences section, which is psychology and sociology. You don't need to take these two courses before you take the MCAT. I took them before the MCAT, but I also finished college before the MCAT, so you might not be in my position, but you definitely don't need to take psychology or sociology. You can learn it from the MCAT books you have on its own. So after I read and took notes on each chapter, I would go back over all my notes and the whole chapter itself and make a summary sheet of high yield information. If I was stuck on a specific concept or mechanism, then I would try to do everything in my power to find other external resources to help explain it better for me. I had to make sure that I had to fully understand and be comfortable with that topic before I could move on to the rest of the chapter. So moving on to the practice section of my MCAT prep, I had about 2 months before my test date to work on practice questions and exams. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I recommend you guys work on these practice questions and at least one practice test a little bit earlier during your MCAT study phase, maybe concurrently with your content review. This will help you apply your knowledge and work on your weaknesses earlier on. So in the beginning of my practice phase, every 1 to 1.5 weeks, I took a third-party full-length exam. So during these practice test days, I tried to simulate a very similar testing environment as I would on the real test day. So that means I woke up really early, started my exam around 7:30. I locked myself up in my room for 7.5 hours, and I took my scheduled breaks as I normally would. At the end of every test, I would not even look at my results or what questions I did horribly on. I would take the rest of the day off and just relax and unwind. The following morning, I would finally go over every question I got right and wrong. I would go over every single question thoroughly, and every topic that I wasn't 100% confident in, I would take note of that topic on a Google Doc. Also, I had a separate 4-subject notebook where I divided biology, biochemistry, physics and chemistry, and the behavioral sciences section. In that notebook, I would work on additional problems, practice problems, or concepts that I needed help on from my practice exams. 1 month before my test date, I worked solely on the AAMC material. Like I said in my previous video, the AAMC practice tests and practice questions are the most representative of the real thing. That is because they are the same organization who made the MCAT. So I did this because I wanted to get used to reading the passages and working on problems that were written similarly to the real test. There's also one thing that I should mention is that for the double AMC material, they do have an explanation for the correct and incorrect answers, but it's very vague. So it kind of sucks if you got a question wrong and you really don't understand why, and their explanation is very broad. So there are these forums where other students can input their own suggestions on why certain questions were right and wrong and give their own explanation for it. So what I used was basically Reddit or Student Doctor Network or just Google. There are other pre-meds luckily out there who maybe understand the material a little bit better or they got the question right. I took my final double AMC practice test no later than 1 week before my test date. This is because I didn't want to burn myself out or stress myself out with the questions that I was getting right or wrong. You know, I was studying for this exam for almost 3.5 months now. So at that point, it's either I understand the information or I really don't. So I just didn't want to psych myself out even more. Alright, well this is all I have for you guys in this video. I hope this was helpful and I just didn't stress you guys out even more for the MCAT. In all seriousness though, I think you guys are gonna do great. I believe in you. I believe that if you put in the time, the work, and the brain power, you're gonna get the score that you deserve. I can already tell that you guys are hardworking individuals. I mean, you're already one step ahead in the game by preparing yourselves and understanding the process and different study tips on how to prepare for the MCAT. But yes, so I believe in you guys. You guys got this. You guys are smart. You guys are hardworking. And you guys will get a good score and you guys will be doctors and get into med school. Trust me. Anyways, if you guys thought this video was helpful, I'd appreciate it if you guys gave it a thumbs up. And if there's anything I forgot to address, please let me know in the comments below so I could address it in a future video. In next week's video, I'm going to share some tips on how I improved my score by 16 points from the first exam I took before I had to postpone my MCAT to January. Also, if you guys are interested in learning more about my pre-med journey, how I got to where I am today, basically from community college, going to UCLA, taking a few gap years, working as an EMT, volunteering, research, all that stuff, please subscribe and follow me on Instagram to stay tuned for more content like this. Thanks for watching. Happy studying. I'll see you guys in my next video. And that there are some people who can self-teach themselves these materials